those that are like, I don't have time to do that, trust me, you have time. Like if I can figure this out, I don't think most people can figure out from a time management perspective. And you just have to be okay with just jumping in.
All right, we are live, and I am excited today because I get to live an awesome life and do awesome things all the time. And today I get to do something really, really awesome. I didn't think I would ever get this opportunity, and I'm going to share the story on that in a minute. But before we do that, we have thousands of listeners, and we only have like a handful of reviews on this podcast. So I need you to take 10 seconds and please just go leave a review. I know you're not doing it. I know you're not listening. So please just go do that for us. That would really, really help. But today I get to interview Timm with two M's. And this is really special because I've been watching your content for a long time. And actually, my project manager, Eve, loves your content as well. And we always talk about your content and like, how can we do things more like Timm? And it's so awesome, all this stuff, Timm. And we know your daughter, and your daughter actually has the same name as my project manager. So we talk about that. And I said, do you think you could get him on the show? Because if you could do that, that would be amazing. And she said, watch, I'm going to do it. And she did it. And so kudos to her. But Timm, it's so good to have you here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Dude, 1,000% my pleasure. I mean, this whole journey has been insane to begin with. So the fact that there was even that conversation happening behind the scenes, so to speak, that led up to you and us having this conversation is so surreal. So it's a treat anytime I get a chance to meet cool people and have a good conversation.
Yeah, so just to give everybody a background, if you don't know Timm, go check out his TikTok. He makes like first person kind of day in the life videos, I would call them, but he's super original. There's nobody else out there like him. And one of the things that I loved about your content is that you give a peek inside of what you do. So you work for a marketing agency and you are doing marketing all day long, but then you're marketing yourself as well. How did it come about that you kind of went viral on TikTok?
Blind dumb luck. I was doing kind of the usual social media rapport for somebody my age. I'm 44 years old. So, when I remember when Instagram first came out and it was like, okay, cool. Like there's actually a way to share pictures now in real time. What a novel concept. And so literally there from the get-go, I bet my user number is like, one of the first 100,000 or so. And it got to a place where I was just getting bored with how often people thought I was making weird stuff for Instagram, and I'm like, but this is the point. Like, it's got filters, and it's basically a naked, profile until you start filling it with stuff. So, I'm sorry, I don't want to keep filling it with just pictures of me and my family, love and family, but like that's just boring shit to me. And cool for you, and I'm not judging, but like my brain works. I want to experiment. I need to be able to experiment. And that plus hearing Gary Vaynerchuk talk a lot about TikTok in 2019, I'm like, all right, let me give this a shot and see what's going on over there.
And that was pre-COVID. That was pre-COVID that you downloaded.
Yeah, okay. Pre-COVID, August 2019. Downloaded, made my first one, which ironically is like almost exactly what you would see today without a voiceover. It's just like me and my wife and my daughter going to a pop-up museum in Brooklyn. And then I just kind of watched for a little bit. And by watched, I mean like I just kind of like digested what was happening in the space and what would be an appropriate place for me to insert myself. Because to your point, like I've got the side of my brain that is very marketing centric and very, data driven and very specific to the analytics of the business. And then there's just the pure curiosity side. And I'm always like over engineering things. So it's like, okay, what do I do? What's my content strategy going to be? And so I did this like fake interview with myself where it's like, hey, we'd like to, why do you think that you're good for TikTok? And I kind of joked around that because at the time I was doing all these protein bar reviews, which has just been kind of like an ongoing theme with my content since I've been making content. And I'm making fun of myself. I'm like, no, don't bring that here. Like nobody wants that stuff. And at first, I was just really making it up, doing mostly protein bar reviews at 5:00 in the morning in my wife's gym basement. And then when the voiceover feature got added, because I was doing everything natively in the app, when the voiceover feature got added, that was a game changer for me. I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. Now I can narrate it like a Wes Anderson movie to a certain extent. And that just completely changed everything for me. And at the time, it's interesting, at the time I was much more comfortable talking to the camera. I'm not now. Like for some reason, I'm not very good at it. I love these types of conversations. I exist in a one-on-one type of world all day, every day, just based on the nature of my job and running a 240-person team. But speaking to the camera just became a bit of like not kryptonite, but I'm spending too much time doing too many takes. And unless it's real like this, in a real
Yeah.
conversation, I can be emphatic, I can be personal, I can be, hopefully resonating with an
Hmm.
audience. But the voiceover just changed it because then I could just be myself behind the curtain and let the visuals do the work for me. And that would be my answer to your question of like what was the viral moment. It was voiceover coming out, doing a day in the life, or it was like an introduction. I didn't even consider it a day in the life. I knew the concept of vlogging, but I wasn't like, oh, I know exactly what that is and how it should work.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, hey, here's my name, and I'm this year's, and like, here's the things that I'm into. And at the time, was trying to piece things into things that I put in my mouth and then things that I do not put in my mouth because I just thought that that was kind of like a funny concept of
Yeah.
like, oh, here's all the things you don't eat, and this is the bucket that they go into, and then here's all the things you eat, and here's how I want to talk about it. And then it's kind of evolved from there. And like, in all honesty, and for anybody that listens to this and is looking for inspiration or some sort of jumping off point into making stuff, like I I don't really know what has happened over the past 3 years to a large extent. It's like because I'm doing, especially those that are like, I don't have time to do that. Trust me, you have time. Like if I can figure this out, I don't
Yeah.
think most people can figure out from a time management perspective. And you just have to be okay with just jumping in because it's like part of me wants to be like, really? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's been 3 years?
Yeah, it's interesting because I when I got on, I didn't have any idea what I was doing, and I just said I want to see if I could figure this out, just to even get some followers. And I just said, made a deal with myself. I'm going to post 3 times a day, even if I have nothing to say. Which sometimes I was posting just the most ridiculous stuff, and it would get no views, of course. And then eventually, I kind of found my groove, started getting a lot of followers. And then I learned, and I was doing the talking directly into the camera, but I was driving. But I have a Tesla, so it was on auto drive, and I'm just like recording while I'm driving down the road, and like those got pretty good views for me. There was good views. Then I saw your day in the life, and I was like, man, that's so interesting the way he does that. I'm a work from home CEO with a team of 100 people. I said that's unique. Not a lot of people do that, right? So I'll start talking about that, and then I started having people go, please don't steal Tim's vibe. And I'm like, bro,
Oh, no way.
yeah. People were like literally catching that I was like learning from you, and I was like, bro, I hope I can steal some of his vibe, right? Like I'm hoping that I can get like if I get 20% of that, that would be really cool. And so and now I'm switching more to like a podcast clip thing and trying to have other people do some of the heavy lifting there. And it's not as going as well on TikTok, but I want to just keep giving it reps and see if people clip onto it. And if not, then we'll try something else. So how did COVID play into that for you when COVID hit? Did you take off during COVID? Because I saw you were going into the office every day still during COVID, right?
Yep. Never missed a day. My boss got fired right before the pandemic hit. And so I was reporting to the president. So there was incentive there for me to just be here. You know, this is a large company. This is a really, really, really big company. And so being in the position that I'm in, and then especially with my boss being gone, being here on a consistent basis was critical. And I also just like the routine. I think there's something about like in my brain, like this will help me be okay with this. And it gave also my family some routine too, right? They would drive me in and drop me off and they'd pick me up at the end of the day. So we weren't all just in the house all day long. So I really have no work from home experience really whatsoever. One day, and it was only because of a blizzard. It wasn't
Yeah.
because of the pandemic. There was one day that I worked from home during that entire rip, but there was nothing really COVID. I mean, the COVID aspect of TikTok during that era for me was almost the distraction of pretending like it wasn't there to a
Mm,
certain extent.
yeah.
Like I vividly remember standing on Seventh Avenue, crossing the street when I actually had to wait for a car to pass because there really were no cars even on the
Yeah, I've
roads.
seen your videos where you
And
stand in the middle of the street and you're like, I'm filming a video here and this has never been done before.
and you know the I remember being like angry of like everything was dark and quiet, and I could just hear the HVAC units in the buildings
Wow.
humming, and there was no street noise otherwise. And being like, God, turn it back on! Like, how do we turn this back on? This is insane. I can't. But that being, there was nothing. I don't recall there being anything like that that would actually show up in my content. I was literally just trying to experiment with storytelling, with providing perspective, with the random shit that's in my brain that has seemingly helped, relative to the people on the team, or just kind of, career perspective in general that's been helpful, especially because I'm, C student that really, there's really not a whole heck of a lot that would say like, oh yeah, this guy would be perfect for running a team of the size and dealing with a P&L of the size and like all those kinds of things. So if nothing else, it was just like it was a background element happening. But it did, the one thing about COVID and TikTok was it did give me free reign of the office, right? So like I could sit in my chair here and do, and that's part of the reason why I don't do it, because I can't have people walking by my glass door and being like, "Are you making TikToks?"
Yeah.
And like, if I had 5 minutes in the middle of the day, I could sit down and do it. And I could go into the copy room and set something up, and I could lie down on the conference room table and kind of make jokes about it. But outside of that, there really wasn't much there that like, kind of helped. Or I wasn't one of those that was like in a bubble, and this is what I did and I focused on with this specific intention. It was just like, oh, this is interesting. People are starting to follow. And like, oh my God, there's 1,000 people. Oh my God, there's five
Yeah.
thousand people. Like, oh my God, this is the size of Madison Square Garden, which is 16,000 people.
It's
Like, this is
crazy.
blowing my
Yeah.
mind. And otherwise, there's just keep it going.
Yeah. So what's it like being TikTok famous now? Like when you walk around, has it changed? I've seen you at like businesses and people noticing you on the street.
It is. It's so funny. I've been thinking about this a lot recently because I get stopped more now than I ever have, obviously, in my life. Right? All of a sudden, people just stop me in the subway, and in other circumstances, you're like, this is really crazy. What's going on? It's becoming more frequent, which makes it more normal. But at the same time, it's not normal. I feel like I'm in this very lucky phase where the the community is tight knit enough where it's so positive and there's such good energy that comes from it. I love it. Like I do wish that people, and because everyone's been super
Hmm.
respectful, and the people that ask for pictures is like amazing. Like, yeah, I'm gonna take a second and take a selfie with you. Like, I could be a flash in the pan. Let's go away in 10 minutes,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So even if I'm that guy that's in your photo reel from that one time, from that thing that you were into for a hot minute, like that's cool. I
Yeah.
can I'm good with that. So it's bizarre. I'm embracing it, and I love the opportunity to see things to meet the human beings that are
Yeah.
on the other side of this.
Yeah.
Right? It's so crazy to be on the one side of the screen, but to the opportunity to be on the other side with them for a minute, like that's gold.
Yeah, I love it, and I think the reason that you're experiencing a lot of positivity is because the way you perceive life, like the way you approach things. I think of like an athlete who's on the opposite end of like a famous spectrum, right? They're competitive, and they have to be competitive to win and keep their job. So that creates a lot of positive for them, but it also creates a lot of negative fights and like people confronting them and saying mean things about their mom and things like that. I think that you've done such a good job of approaching life in a positive way where you're like trying to find the positive things that it brings out those people, and that's what it did for me. It resonated with me because I try to approach life that way, and and the more people you manage and the bigger opportunities you get, the harder it is to perceive things that way sometimes. And I think you do a really really good job of that. How what do you think it is that resonates with people, that they love watching your content so much? Have you figured that out, what that secret sauce is?
I think they can tell, even if they can't tell at the surface. I think that there's something about it that, for the most part, people understand that I don't know what I'm doing, and that there's no specific angle to it. It is just me sharing things in, as close to real time as I can possibly get. I think that that's it, because in some of the interactions that I've had with people who've stopped me, and usually one of the first things I say is, if they're, especially if they're, complimentary, and to kind of level set, because there's an aspect to all of this that I'm quite uncomfortable with, just because I don't think that there's anything special about me that would give me reason to really stand out in this capacity. Is and I tell them, I say I don't know what I'm doing. Like I literally have no content. Like I don't know what I'm going to do today. I mean, I know what I'm going to do today only because I cut a piece at 4:30 in the morning. I'm going to wait until probably after this conversation to post it because I know it's a better time of day. But like that's about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, and I
So
think that
I think that
that
there's
vulnerability is huge though. So most people, especially in the corporate world, because I sometimes you'll call yourself a corporate schmuck. I'm not calling you that, but I'll hear you say like,
yeah
guys, I'm just a
yeah
corporate
yeah
schmuck. I gotta work my way up here. But it's like, and a lot of
yeah
people have that view, right, of the world and those kind of things. But the vulnerability, it's hard to have a job and be vulnerable because once you're vulnerable, then that could lead to your demise. And something at our company, we're really big on company culture. So I could tell you are crafting a culture with your team and you care about them and you meet with them and you talk with them and you're probably vulnerable with them. And I actually use your line all the time where, guys, I have no idea. Like, we're doing a marketing boot camp for dental marketing managers in November. Just got off a call. I was like, guys, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never done this before. I'm totally making it up. We're probably going to fail. And I think that's a superpower in itself. And I think that's huge. I know you're downplaying it like, hey, that's the only thing, but I think people really respect that when you do that, and I think that is one of your secret sauces, if you will.
it's so thank you. I always thought it was a weakness, especially in a very corporate environment.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, I felt like I was being led down a path of the bigger the job, the more you have to push people, and that means just being stern and direct and cold and calculated to a certain extent. And I struggled with that mightily. I remember sitting in rooms with some of the top people. This is, my company's been through like went through a substantial merger 5 years ago now, and in the wake of that, I remember sitting there being like, "Wait a minute, this is nuts! Like, how is this general behavior even
Mm-hmm.
permissible? Like, let alone whether or not it's cool, but like, this just doesn't make sense. We're not sitting here trying to like figure out how are we going to solve any type of broader human challenge, right?
So good.
And and I and so and so I and so I struggled with it. And then I read the series of books by the Harvard Business Review called How to Be More Human at Work. And it's like a book on happiness and authentic leadership and those types of things. I remember not having very high expectations, but I'm like, it's Harvard Business Review, so it's like I'm assuming that it's not just gonna be a bunch of kumbaya,
Mm-hmm.
like what's in here. And I remember feeling so empowered after reading that. And I'm not a big reader, right? Like I'm not one of those guys who can be like, oh, like look, I've got stacks of
Yeah.
books around. Mostly they're just like propped up. And so that was like, wow, actually being myself in places where I've seen and had people come to me and say, this is why we like working for you. I had one dude who had been with the company forever. And when he retired, he said, I wish I would have met you 20 years ago. I remember being like, my God, that is about the nicest thing that anybody could potentially say to me. But like, I don't like, I gotta figure out the why
Mm-hmm.
within that. And so your point, like that, just being human and being vulnerable, and especially if you can look at it. I read this amazing article once. It was like, your skills in that capacity are like a set of golf clubs, right? And if you can go from this is when I need to use this club for this circumstance, and I need to be specific and I need to be direct, and they need to understand the importance because this is a critical piece. But then I also need to know when to go in and get
Yeah.
the other club so I can pull something in the corner and be like, do you trust me? And if you trust me, then know that X, Y, or Z is going to be okay. And here's a very vulnerable story about when I've been in a similar position and how I got through it. And if you can weave those things together, then I think you can get a lot of appreciation and attention from
It's
people.
true. We have a lot of great people on our team that do great things, and then their kid will get sick, and they're like, "No, but don't worry, I'm gonna." And I'm like, "No, no, no, stop. We do dental marketing. In the big scheme of things, in 100 years, no one's even going to remember anything that we're doing from a dental marketing perspective, like zero. But your kids,
Mm-hmm.
it's super important, and go take care of that." And people are shocked. It's crazy to me too that people are shocked by that. And I think it's just I think we've have this like factory mindset where I go to work every day, I pull the lever at the factory and I've done it for 50, 60 years. And then I retire and I get my retirement. And there was like that mind, at least for me, that mindset or that picture was like very ingrained in me from like, this is what work means, but it doesn't have to mean that. I don't think that that's a steadfast rule, and that you can make people's lives better just in their day-to-day interaction with you, no matter what your no matter what your rank is as well. It doesn't matter what your rank is. You can make somebody's, just by saying something nice like, hey, your hair looks nice today, people smile and you brighten people's day. And I think we miss that sometimes.
Totally agreed. And here's one: if there's a soundbite that you pull from this that is used in some sort of clip and that hopefully gets broader attention, I hope it's this one. I've seen these posts and from some of my favorite creators out there that just do kind of hilarious corporate jokes, etc. And this one person in particular is really well known. I'm not going to say his name because I don't feel like I'm targeting him in particular. But he basically plays out this conversation where he's having an annual review conversation with his boss, and his boss is like, "Let's talk about how we get you to that next level for your next promotion." And he's like, "I don't want to." He's like, "Well, how are you going to advance your career?" He's like, "I don't want to advance my career. I'm very comfortable right now." And makes perfect sense, right? Not everybody should feel like they have to climb the
Yep.
corporate ladder and et cetera, et cetera. But here's the point that you just made, and probably the thing that is not front and center that I hope the next generation starts to understand, and if even if it's just a handful of folks, the smart and skeptical ones should look at it from the broader perspective of how I can help at a much larger scale than it's just my career.
Yeah.
It's no longer just anybody's career anymore. That is flown out the window like 10 years ago. It is now positions where you can have a bigger influence on closing pay gaps, DE&I, environmental policies at some companies, right? Health influence
Mm-hmm.
on healthcare. I think you're like, oh, HR is so boring. Okay, how about you run HR for a company that has a couple 100,000 people, and you have the potential of impacting how all of them pay or do not pay for the health insurance you provide? Would
Yeah.
that be a pretty dope
Yeah.
position to be in? Right? So, like, for those that are like, okay, I'm just going to I get it, but we need the smart, skeptical ones to be like, cool, how can I do it the right way to get to the top to change things for
Yeah,
everybody?
it's true. We use, because we talk about KPIs all the time. So there's like all these KPIs, and we want to hit all our KPIs and want to grow and all that kind of stuff. But our number one KPI that we measure at our company is our ENPS score and our weekly pulse. And our weekly pulse is, how's everybody feeling this week? And they go, well, you mean at work? No, 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 no. And I have to remind the team every week, no, as a human being, how are you feeling this week? Well, I feel cruddy. Well, okay, was there anything we can do to support you? You don't have to tell us why you're feeling cruddy, but if your kid's sick and you're at home working in your bedroom, like, I want to know that, so that way we can support you. We'll send you lunch. And just, there's little things that you can do inside of the corporate structure that you can make people's lives better. Now we're only at 100 people, so I don't know. I have this fairy tale in my head that I can keep doing this and keep growing it, right? And keep impacting people in a positive way where people want to work with us. But I don't know if you can get to a certain size where you can't do that anymore. But so far, it hasn't happened for us yet. Changing gears on that, like more moving from like the corporate structure to like the entrepreneur world. I see like your wife owns a gym, right? And then I see you, like, you have like the t-shirts, and I just see you doing little flares of entrepreneurial stuff, not little, but big stuff. But you still have your job. Like, where do you fall on the spectrum of entrepreneur, creator? You're a creator, you're obviously artistic, right? You have that flair of you, but you also have figured out the corporate side. Like, where do you put yourself in any buckets, or do you, like, where do you fall on that ladder?
I fall on the ladder of I'm willing to experiment like crazy, watch a whole bunch, kind of what you said earlier. Like try a whole bunch of stuff, see what works, see what fails, rinse and repeat. I love so my wife is tried and true small business owner, has been so for almost 10 years now, and because she wanted to get out of corporate space, and it just made sense for a multitude of reasons for her to get into fitness. And the clothing thing, it's peanuts, relatively speaking. But I'm very specific about like how something fits, how it feels, if I wore something, what would I want it to be like? And it was just my opportunity to kind of experiment. I mean, the first time somebody put in a comment like, "Hey, where's your merch?" I was like, "Where's my merch?" Like, what is that's insane? What a crazy concept that somebody would want to buy something that is based like that blew my mind. So it finally got to a space where I'm like, okay, cool. Here's the T-shirt, and the T-shirt is kind of like a representation of this moment that we're having together now. And then I've done some crew necks and stuff, and some of it is trying to like bridge into a more true like brand and what that could look and feel like. Um, it's really all just experimentation, and it's also me trying my damnedest on a consistent basis. If I have X amount of hours a day, what are things that I just want to try or at least kind of kick down the road a little bit and see where it goes? And if it doesn't go anywhere, then at
So
least I
what, on
tried
that
it.
same note, what are, I know your family is big on it, and I know you love your like borderline OCD, like with your schedule and stuff. I'm the same way. So I kind of pick it up in you, like you got to do things in a certain way. Outside of those things, what makes you happy? What do you really enjoy doing?
This, I mean, I don't know. Like, there's nothing. I can find enjoyment in just about anything. I think that's both a blessing and a curse. Making content is 1,000% my favorite hobby. Like, I don't really watch anything. If you said, "Hey, I want to have a conversation about like the five best shows on TV right now," I'd be like, "You got the wrong dude." Like, I really don't know what the hell's happening in that space whatsoever. Never seen Game of
Me neither.
episode of Game of Thrones. Never
Yeah,
seen an
I'm the
episode
same.
of like you name like half of the right. Hey, half of the more critical pieces of pop culture recently. I have no idea. Um, it's it's like I can find joys in just about anything, which is amazing. So just making content and existing and having as many good days in a row as possible.
What
That's
is
kind of
have you ever thought about doing like more of like a full vlog or podcast?
yes. The short answer is yes. It
Hmm.
comes down to time, right? I've I've got a little setup in my basement that would be perfect for podcasting. It's just a matter of getting into like some sort of like, okay, now that this is going to be the dedicated time and this is how I do it, etc. It's been easier recently to just because there's no specific obligation within
Yeah.
TikTok. It should be doing it on a consistent basis, but it's not like you know you're not going to get penalized for not being there
Yep.
for a few days in a row. And I would love to do more long form on YouTube. I capture probably 20 minutes worth of footage a day and then somehow whittle it down to 60
Yep.
seconds. I do all my own editing. I do all like everything that people see is 1,000% just done by me, with the exception of like my wife might get a clip and I might seal it off of our iCloud account. But that's really it. And the rest is me. I would love to do more long form stuff. If time was not an issue, I could probably easily just based off the stuff that's in my head, I could crank out a podcast a day,
So my
probably
my
just. And some people are
my
like, oh,
project
like
manager just messaged. She
yeah,
said,
go ahead.
"Yes, we will do a podcast with you, Tim." So we do actually have 4 podcasts right now, and I we do all the back end. So if you ever need a partner, just say, "Hey, they'll do all the back end,
Oh,
and
cool,
all you have to do is show up and just talk, and we do the rest." We would love to do that with you. So just throwing that out there, no pressure though. But so
dope.
what are, I know that you love New York. Like I can tell that you really love New York and like all the surroundings and riding the bike, your sushi spots, your food spots, where you get your salad, where you work, even when you were working when no one else was in New York. But what are some things that you don't like about living in New York? Is there anything that you're like, you know what, I wish I could change this about where I live?
My first thought goes to just the massive
Mm,
discrepancy in
yeah,
wealth that is more evident here than I think in a lot of other environments. Just because here it's a very distinct possibility that you could be on a subway and you're sitting in between somebody that may not have a home and somebody that may be making
yeah,
$5 million a year, and literally within the shadow. And I look just to my left, and there's the world's tallest residential building, which is the Central Park Tower, also known as the Nordstrom Tower. And there's apartments in there that go for $15,000 a square
mm,
foot.
that's great. Yeah,
Right? Imagine carrying a six-figure mortgage on a monthly basis. Right? Numbers that are just absolutely perplexing and staggering. If I could change anything about the city, I would completely revamp all of our affordable housing. right? Like, how do you just kind of lift the quality of life up for as many people as quickly as humanly possible? I would create an environment in which if you chose to work at that fast food restaurant, that chain, that deli, that small business, you should be able to live within a reasonable commuting distance and not have it cost
Hmm.
an absolute fortune, right? And I know some people might be like, "Hey, what's up,
Yeah.
gentrification?"
Well, you're no
Kind
matter
of
anytime you take a
talking about
position,
sides
someone's
of the
going to
mouth
get you from
here,
one end to the other. But I have you ever thought about like
right?
politics from that angle? Are you into politics? We don't have to go down the politic road, but just curious because you're bringing up some great points. I'll tell you this: for one thing that's really hard about marketing in New York, and I always tell people this is that you literally have when you geofence things, you literally have homeless people living below millionaires, right? Like, and it's like to your point, it's all
Mm-hmm.
mixed together. Have you thought about that, like how to help from a greater scale with ideas?
The word politics, I think, has just got a weird
Hmm.
association with it for a multitude of reasons. I like
Yeah.
fixing problems at scale, right? So if there were, if somebody was like, "Hey, you could do these things," like the I once wrote to the guy who was the head of Ogilvy, the agency. I had an opportunity to reach out to him, met him once. He said, "Oh, send me an email. Tell me what you'd like to do, and send me a resume." The job, this is a true story. The job that I told him would be my number one choice would be running the MTA, which is the Metropolitan Transit Authority here in New York City, which oversees the subway and a bunch of other public transportation. And the reason why I said, and I tied it back to like something reasonable, so it wasn't just something off the wall, is like there's history and context. This is a massive issue with just substantial economic impact, and that would be really fun to wrap my head around and see how it fix. And there's just this like interesting Jenga puzzle of like how do you make the traffic flow better, and like how do you upgrade the signals, etc. So I love the like being New York City mayor. That'd be sensational. Do I think that that's a reasonable path and something that I'm gonna start to pursue? Probably not. But um, you know, helping solve broader problems at scale, um,
Yeah, I've
I
heard a
really
lot of
like that.
people say that the future of politics are going to be people with big social platforms because they're already going to have those that voting block and that influence, and they know how to communicate. I know when the television first came into
Mm-hmm.
play in politics, it changed elections because now it mattered how you showed up, it mattered how you dressed, it mattered how you looked and you carried yourself. Like those things all were before it was just radio, so it was just your voice. So I could definitely see that, and you obviously have the brain for it. You are looking at things from an angle that other people aren't thinking about them and other people aren't talking about, and I think that's awesome. What is right now, what's your favorite protein bar?
That would be the no cow chocolate
Hmm.
peanut butter cup. There's something about the no, and I know this is polarizing on the topic, that no cow, because it's a vegan based bar, people are like can't do it, right? They find the texture to be way off. I find it to be more cookie dough like in nature, and especially for the peanut butter cup, the texture and the fact that this is one of their first dipped bars, in my humble opinion, makes it pretty close to a Reese's cup, right? Because the center of a Reese's cup is not
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
most moist, chewy thing ever. Like
yeah. It's
it's a bit
brittly.
dry.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
peanut.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like it's dried peanut butter, right? Yeah. So I actually find that to be like really, really, really spot on. I do eat a Fit Crunch almost every night before bed, and I'm super excited about. And this was no joke. And that I've got a friend in the TikTok space named Marcus Milione, who's just like a really, really, really smart dude. Got a great brand name Minted, and I remember buying his pre-workout, being like, it can make me go blind just by randomly buying this pre-workout from some kid on TikTok that decided to make his own pre-workout. But I love pre-workout as much as I love, talking about protein bars. I just don't bring up the topic as much. Let's see what he got. And he makes a great pre-workout, and he's let me try some of his
Yeah, plug
sample
it. Yeah.
protein bars. In fact,
Ooh.
I literally kept the wrapper at my desk, and I was like, dude, how do you do this in your first shot? So anyway, but the short answer is no cow
What about sushi? What's your
chocolate
favorite
peanut butter cup.
sushi that you get? Like, what's your favorite piece of sushi?
Sushi of Gari on 46th Street here in the city is absolutely outstanding. It's probably the best bang for the buck. Like you could go to a place like Sushi Nakazawa down in the West Village and just have one of the best omakase experiences of your life. It's the guy who is the
Yeah,
apprentice of
Subway.
Jiro
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Jiro Dreams of Sushi. Yeah, so his apprentice opened Sushi Nakazawa. Amazing omakase experience. Sushi Agari is
Like
probably the
one thing
best a
though,
la
what's
carte
like one thing, like if
joint
you
in the
could just go
city.
eat one thing.
Probably their salmon sushi that has this
Mm,
tomato garlic top, which sounds very odd for sushi, and I thought it sounded odd too when it was first heated up to me. But the warmth of the tomato garlic compote on top of the salmon with
and the rice
rice
is
cooked the
warm,
right
right? They
way
serve the rice
is
warm because
just
they're doing the
absolutely.
traditional Japanese. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep,
And then the fish is cold,
yep,
so you got the
yep.
warm, cold, warm.
Yeah, no, it's
Okay, question for
it's
you.
out of this
So
world.
if I gave you $1 billion and you had to sell everything, though, yeah, just sold everything. Your house is sold, your business is all, everything's sold. What would you do?
I would go and buy the dilapidated house on Second Place in my neighborhood, and I would, with my daughter's assistance, because she's actually shown that she likes this kind of stuff, we would renovate that, bring it back to life. So I'm staying in the neighborhood, I'm buying that house, I'm renovating it from soup to nuts. I would then start a company called Chiusano and Daughter, which is the name of the pseudo brand that I've used for clothing. And I would offer several services all for free, obviously because I just got $1 billion. Kind of the top piece would be C-level consulting and coaching, because I do think, to the earlier point we brought up, the human
Yeah.
connection is really what makes the magic. And some people just don't like people management. I think I can teach anybody how to be really good at people management and how to have that type of gravitational pull that's going to get large groups to do amazing things. So I would do that at the top on a one-to-one basis. In the middle, I would build out some sort of consulting services that I could do to help from an organizational structure, maybe consult with the MTA, etc. And then I would do just loads of free content and as much free speaking and engagement as humanly possible to kind of scale out, especially for like the entry level and underserved communities. Like, here's how you can build a good resume. Here are your next steps to get into the corporate space, and just try to help foundationally as much as humanly possible. So it's kind of like, you know, the larger kind of sandwich, so to speak, of how I can
So
help
you've thought
across
about
the
you've thought
broader
about this.
business.
Yeah, you've
Off
thought
the top.
that was not off the top here. That was so good. Yeah, that was most people are like, okay, I got to think about this. You literally had the whole answer. That was really good. Is there anything that I
No,
didn't ask you that I should have?
God. Literally the first thing that came to my mind is what's next on your calendar. I don't know, just like as a random thing. Um, no, man. I mean, like, these types of conversations are just fun. So like, and I love the fact that you did such a wide range there. I mean, you probably could have asked me favorite
Yeah, what
sneakers
is
and
your
just
favorite
kind of go
sneaker? I
off
know
of
I know
like
you love sneakers
how can
too.
I
I try to
bob
cover
and
stuff
weave
that you
there.
love. So
So I'm looking at it on the shelf here. This is a new-ish story, but it's an old sneaker. It is the original Yeezy Turtle Dove, but the infant size. And the reason why I'm picking that is, at some point I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy these for my daughter. I think she was 4 or 5 at the time, and they were like, they're a couple $100 off of StockX or whatever, probably like $400 or something astronomical for a pair of sneakers for a kid of that age. And but the rationale was, I can. This is like, in the grand
yeah.
scheme, like, I'm not a Bugatti guy. Like, there's nothing like that. That's about as fancy and flashy as I get. And she wore them like crazy. She wore them when we went and watched my wife run a marathon in Berlin, like the places that pair of sneakers have been. And then on top of that, and I knew this was part of it when I bought it, because I'm like, I'm basically going to get four different wears out of this one pair of shoes. My daughter wore them, and then we handed them down to one of her cousins. She wore them for a while, and then she handed them off to her twin sisters, who shared them for a while. So literally, there were four girls in my family that got to wear and beat the crap out of a pair of original turtle dove Yeezys. They finally came back to me after everybody had outgrown them, I don't know, a month ago or so. And to see how beat up and to know how much fun was had in those from little girls' perspectives, and to also know where they've traveled in the world, makes them my favorite pair of shoes. My own favorite personal pair of kicks would be the Fragment Jordan 1s. Colorway is just absolutely outstanding, and the fact that they were the first in the remastered series when they started to get back to like the original shape.
That's
Um,
awesome. That's awesome. I appreciate you taking the time to share all these things with us. You did a great job today, and can't wait to get this out to the world.
my pleasure. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for
Have a good
thinking
day.
of me and for having me.